We're in a jazz club. Here we go with some funky tunes. What should I do? God, what is wrong with me? Hi, everyone. It's time for another episode of Let's Argue, where I go on the internet. I accept your hot takes, your unpopular opinions, your tough questions. I respond to the best ones. That's what we're going to do. That's what we do every time. And you know what? I'm nothing if not consistent, so let's go! The Beatles are actually underrated nowadays. I mean, such is the cycle of things that become famous and massive and influential and then eventually fall from grace and become maybe like less lauded over and obscure and, you know, maybe not like praised to the degree that they were at one point. And when everybody's kind of like forgotten about the thing, you can kind of go back and be like, hey, what's going on with this thing over here that people aren't really talking about anymore? What's going on? And look, there are lots of artists over the years who are essentially like that, or were like that at one point. You know, there was a time when like Fleetwood Mac was actually a very hot group back in the day, and then I would say they kind of fell into quite a bit of relative obscurity until it was that, like, you know, the Zoomer generation's like, wait, holy shit, wait a fucking second. This Fleetwood Mac thing here, this is actually some hot shit. And it goes from being like a countercultural embrace to even a mainstream cultural embrace if it grows from there. I mean, yeah, you know, consumption cycles.
Hey, it's me, Giggins. We want to take a break from this video to let you know about our sponsor, Factor. Take it away, Anthony.
There's more music coming out than ever, and I have to review it all. No, seriously, I've been instructed to by several deities. I have to talk about all of it or I'm gonna face their wrath. So sometimes I'm a little too stressed to cook. That's where Factor comes in. Factor delivers chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals right to your door so that you can eat a meal in 2 minutes instead of way more than 2 minutes. And with their new menu, Factor has doubled its size to more than 80 rotating weekly meals, including keto, calorie smart, or if you're as cool as me, vegan. And even if you're not the internet's busiest music nerd, Factor is introducing a new meal customization option that allows you to select proteins to be swapped at no additional cost. So you can try a different meal with the same protein that you love to continue to get your gains. What I've got here is the peanut Buddha bowl. That's why I love Factor. Look at those gains! So head to factor75.com or hit the link down below in the D box and use code Fantano FB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for a year. Again, that's code Fantano FB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. That's like way bigger than the deal they were doing last time we advertised with them. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchases. So thank you to Factor for sponsoring today's video and helping me get those gains. What I hate most in the music space is that when I say I listen to Taylor Swift, people think I only listen to her. Just because I listen to mainstream artists doesn't mean I can't also listen to Sophie and Björk and A.G. Cook. It's gotten to the point where I'm scared to tell people I listen to her in fear of being severely judged. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we currently live in a state where across society there is a lot of division that trickles down into the music world too, I would say. Especially given how niche many fandoms are in the current age. And two more things. I mean, when you are talking about an artist as big as Taylor Swift, there is going to be some social baggage there. And two, she does actually have like some pretty obsessive fans who do almost like exclusively listen to her. But also, with all of that being said, and I guess this is a warning and, you know, a bit of a pro tip for anybody who might fit into the category this person is talking about. Taylor Swift is also so massive of an artist. There are all sorts of Taylor Swift fans. Hardcore fans, maybe more casuals like myself who like a record or two or a handful of songs. And over the course of my lifetime, I've spoken with and have seen a pretty wide range of people who are into Taylor Swift, from, you know, the adolescent young white girl who's kind of like, stereotypically her fan, to like older, hot, tattooed baddies who, not gonna get much further into that comment. Bongos are the only instrument name which describes what the instrument does. The bong goes. I'm really trying to think. I mean, I do think you are correct on some level. Bongos might be one of the only instrument names that kind of like reads as if it's an onomatopoeia. Maybe not fully though, obviously. Maybe the kazoo on some level. I mean, the kazoo does sound pretty... Cheesecake is pie. That probably explains why I don't like it. I don't fuck with no cheesecake. I don't fuck with no pie. I'm a cake guy all the way. Cake, cookies. Oh, and donuts. If I can get a vegan donut, man, I'm eating 3 or 4 of those in one sitting. I'm sorry, I'm a disgusting pig. I feel like dividing music into subgenres goes way too far these days, especially in hip-hop and electronic music. Is the sound of rage, plug, or tread really distinctive enough from trap to be counted as separate genres? Is it necessary to divide drum and bass or UK garage into further subgenres? I do agree that like in the internet age, in the social media age, when things artistically and socially are kind of like evolving so rapidly to the point where it's nearly impossible to get a grasp of all of it. I do occasionally see new genres popping up all the time that have me thinking like, really? That's a genre now? Especially when we already have labels around to describe those things that like aren't even that old. I will say, specifically in regards to trap though, is rage far removed enough of a thing to require its own title? To a degree, I think yes, especially when you consider trap as a thing generally has been around for a few decades at this point, and the aesthetics and ethos and lyrical content of a lot of these newer rage records now, it is just so far removed from what guys like T.I. and Young Jeezy were doing around the early and mid 2000s. Deftones is now the zeitgeist for heavy music. When it comes to bands from their era, yeah, I would say so, sure. And when it comes to bands that are popular in the current age that, for all intents and purposes, are serving very much as like a gateway to heavier music, yes, I would also say that's the case. But like 110% the zeitgeist right now, I don't know so much about that. How is this new album doing commercially? Can we get that up on the screen right now? I mean, I know the new Deftones album is very big, huge crowd pleaser. I enjoyed quite a bit of it myself. But simultaneously, I do think the metal world at the moment is like a bit too fragmented to have one single band or handful of bands that all sound the same to just singularly be the zeitgeist. I mean, like Sleep Token's last album went #1. Give me a break. Yuno Miles shouldn't be labeled as a bad rapper. His music might be ironically good, but that's still good. I mean, I see what you're saying, but also, like, I don't, because, like, part of the appeal of Miles' stuff is that he does, like, rap bad. Maybe it's, like, kind of on purpose, and it's done in a way that's, like, artful and weird and unique, but, like, it's still on purpose, you know? At the end of the day, I feel like we should all be open to the idea of music being entertaining in different ways and for different reasons. I mean, this is like the same sort of shit I feel like I experience with certain music snobs when, you know, they hear that I like Kendrick Lamar and love his music, but then simultaneously I'll turn around and give Sexy Red an 8 out of 10. And no, it's not because like I think Sexy Red can go bar for bar with Kendrick and is like as skilled a lyricist as Kendrick Lamar. It's because I think they both respectively make entertaining, fun, quality records, but they're doing it along different spectrums, along different types of appeal, along different entertainment values. And I could get further into that explanation, but I feel like that should be enough to sort of like, you know, broadly paint the argument I'm trying to make here. I appreciate your music news, anti-AI, political and beef videos, but I think many of us wouldn't mind if you mix it up with more back-to-basic type video ideas, album tier lists, madness brackets, 5-10 years ago, worst to best, and so on. There are a lot of older albums, artists, songs that we would like to hear your opinion on. Tom Waits, worst to best, please. A Tom Waits worst to best would take way too fucking long. I don't think that's gonna happen. I would die if I did that, even as somebody somebody who was deeply obsessed with his catalog at a certain point in my life. However, I will not rule out the possibility of a Tom Waits tier list. And I do think these types of videos are fun. It just always breaks my heart when Austin and I, we do one of these types of videos, be it a starter pack or whatever, and people just like don't fucking watch it. You know, I mean, I know some people are getting the recommendations out there, but they just don't seem to be like really engaged with. With that being said, I have shifted a lot of my focus in terms of like recommendation content, like over to a lot of the short form stuff I do on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram, on TikTok, and people do seem to like receive it very well there. But I don't know, I can't personally help but notice with the rise of short form, that type of recommendation, like introductory music content that I have done in the past, it just doesn't do as well on YouTube as it does on other platforms and in other spaces. Obviously, like the music news content and so on and so forth, and sometimes track reviews, those still do well on YouTube, which is why like obviously we continue to do them. But retrospective videos, we're going over like the best or worst stuff of the 90s or the various years in the 2000s and so on and so forth. Sometimes it does like flounder. Still, I'm being very open here to, the Tom Waits thing, especially in a tier list format. I hate that female indie artists have been reduced to performative male music. The big three, Clairo, Leve, Biba are all great creative artists that make music that can be appreciated by anyone regardless of gender. I don't think we should be putting labels on music. It devalues the weight and craftsmanship of the work. My man, you're speaking to like a really interesting, what I would say is like, phenomenon when it comes to music culture. And that's that in the process of contextualizing and understanding the music that we're listening to and the way it's consumed, sometimes that music is framed and discussed in a way broadly, be it in a funny fashion or a serious fashion, or it's disseminated in a way that ends up being kind of like, I would say an insult to the artist or the original work, or even kind of frames it in a way that isn't necessarily flattering. I mean, what you're talking about here specifically is like, categorizing these artists as a performative male music because I guess socially, on certain platforms on social media, people have kind of like recognized this pattern that like, oh, guys who are looking to kind of present themselves a certain way and see the music they listen to as an extension of their lifestyle, as a lot of people do, and also on top of that would like to convince the fairer sex that like, hey, I'm a cool, chill, approachable, sensitive guy. Yeah, they all happen to be into this handful of artists. And believe me when I say, again, this is not a new thing. It has been a thing in the past when it's come to, weird niche internet genres cropping up overnight like chill wave, which saw a lot of different artists kind of lumped into that trend that didn't even really participate in it consciously. And a lot of great talent that was given that label was down the road sort of like cast aside and forgotten about because everyone collectively who became obsessed with chill wave when it was a thing at its peak in 2009, they chewed the gum until there was no more flavor left, they spit it out, and then they moved on, and anything that they knew prior that was kind of like, understood to be chill wave was kind of like, forgotten because we're all kind of collectively moving on to the next thing. I also recommend this book that I'm in the midst of reading right now from Mr. Chris DeVille, Such Great Heights. The Complete Cultural History of the Indie Rock Explosion. Again, still working through it, but there's some essential chapters in this book that go over the ways in which Hollywood and the television industry kind of like exploited indie rock and indie pop as a style, as a trend, as an aesthetic, and did so in such a way to where it kind of gave the audiences whose first introduction to this genre was through the artists that are being used in these soundtracks, in these playlists, in these mixes, which then ended up skewing the broader public's perception of indie music as a whole and defining the movement and the genre aesthetically and musically in ways that its originators didn't necessarily intend. Even the artists who were being included on these soundtracks, honestly, the phenomenon that you're, I guess, like observing here, it is a thing. It's something that has been going on for years and years and years and years, and in all the time that I have known it and been familiar with it and have been able to recognize it, I don't know, maybe I'm just an idiot, maybe I'm a fool, maybe I'm not creative enough, but I am yet to sort of like conceive of a silver bullet that kind of prevents that from happening. I feel like us as fans and critics and artists and observers, like all we can truly really do is like roll with the punches of whatever exposure that type of framing might give to a song or an artist or whatever. And then once you might have those casuals coming in through the door kind of being like, oh, what's all this performative male music in here? Try to do your best to convince those people who you see entering in via that gateway that, hey, there's actually like quite a bit of depth here to this thing that you're experiencing right now. Actually, like, you know, maybe do your best to try to like think a bit more about it and understand this beyond the context of maybe a meme or, you know, like a very shallow label you've seen thrown onto it. Like most things, I think good, honest, wholesome discourse is the solution to this kind of misunderstanding, but good luck making that fucking happen, because I feel like most platforms and channels on the internet these days basically exist to thwart any of that fucking happening. 21 Pilots are a good band. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, you know, I don't love a lot of their albums, and some of their early stuff to me reads as kind of cringe. You know, there have been some dookie 21 Pilots bars, I'll say that. That one about like not being from the hood, but like understanding darkness or whatever, like, please. But like, with that being said, these guys have been around forever at this point. Like, they clearly know how to write songs and produce albums. Are they always my cup of tea? No. But it does seem like a lot of thought and passion goes into the vast majority of it all, which clearly translates to the fans who are absolutely loving their stuff to this day. Anderson .Paak deserves the flowers Frank Ocean gets. I mean, I don't know if we need to go as far as to make a direct point of comparison, especially since I feel like these guys very much like create different vibes within their respective albums and projects. But with that being said, I do still think to this day like Frank Ocean is a bit overrated or a bit overhyped, I'll say, given his clear lack of engagement on the music front. And I do think, generally speaking, we should be showing more attention and appreciation to artists who are actually out here grinding every year, dropping consistently, taking risks, because look, who knows? Like, you know, every song, every project an artist puts out could be their fucking last, because maybe it'll be so bad and blow up in their faces so hard, it'll end their career. You know, not to freak anybody out or scare anybody out of releasing music, but, you know, who the hell knows? You know, the big day could happen to anybody. But, you know, even Chance the Rapper overcame that shit, so be out here, drop some music. Like, engage the fans, give the listeners what they want. I mean, obviously, I do find there to be a lot of, like, toxicity and a lot of downsides to the awful and fast, like, music release cycle that everybody is plugged into in the streaming age. I'm not advocating on behalf of that. I think it's terrible. I feel like it ruins creativity and puts a lot of artists on a hamster wheel where they're obsessed with metrics and trends and so on and so forth. But I'm sorry, 10 years for a new album is too goddamn long, and I feel like you're deluding yourself either as an artist or as a fandom if you're out here like, you know, convinced that this person who hasn't dropped an album since like they were still making new fucking seasons of Adventure Time, music's essentially your part-time job at that point. Ed Sheeran is freaking amazing! He is an incredible songwriter, and it is so sad to see everyone hates on him. I fully agree, Shape of You is rough. I don't think Galway Girl or Perfect are that good either, but he does have some amazing songs. I personally think that Castle on the Hill is an great anthemic pop song, and Curtains and Overpass Graffiti and Saltwater are three great songs by him that don't get enough attention. I would also say The Joker and the Queen. Love that song, love that tune. That's a great ballad. And with every Edward Sheeran project, I usually do end up enjoying like a song or two. And look, Ed has been doing his thing for so long. Like, he's undoubtedly a talented vocalist. He knows the ins and outs of writing a song at this point. And, you know, the guy can do a little bit of rapping too. But like, with that being said, I do think much of the time, even if his songs are quality, he does present them in a way that is like overly perfect and sanitary and just kind of like lacks bite and maybe sort of like any organic authenticity. Because even as he has gained more creative independence in this current stage of his career, he still seems completely infatuated with writing songs that just kind of sound like top 40 hits. When it's like, Ed, come on, man, we don't need to be like shooting for the charts every time. Like, take a break. Do something ambitious. Do something that like just doesn't feel so wash, rinse, repeat. Again, I don't deny that talent is most definitely there in Ed's music, but even listening to his latest record, so much of it comes across as just deeply formulaic to the point where I'm just listening and thinking like there's like nothing new or exciting here for Ed. What is going on?
Hey, what you gonna say? Hey, my name is Ricky A.
So yeah, there you go. Those are going to be my arguments for this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know some other arguments you want to engage in the comments. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, let's argue forever.